Well, how do you think the new government is weighing relations with the U.S. versus relationships with China? I mean, the first thing the new prime minister did was go to a Quad meeting.
Yeah. Well, even before that, he was asked in a press conference about the reset and what he would do. And he said, the first country I'll be reaching out to is the United States. So that was a huge relief for me to hear that. He so far hasn't budged. I don't think he's been sucked in by the whole reset conversation. But even today, one of the universities here in Melbourne, La Trobe University, and Dr. Ewan Graham, who's at CSIS in Singapore, is a friend of mine. He used to run that. And there was quite a few healthy debates. There was one, for example, between Clive Hamilton, who you guys know, and Professor Hugh White, who's a military strategist. And I thought that was very healthy. But since Ewan's left, I've seen La Trobe Asia seems to be having these panels where everybody already has the same view. And it's, we must re-engage. They're out on Twitter today, they're inviting people to an event all about should we reset? And of course, if you look at the way that event is portrayed, it's, Australia's rhetoric, we could have managed it better and so on and so forth. So Australia's the bad guy. We need to use diplomacy.
Hold on. So the last 2 years has been a time when after the Australian government just called for an investigation into the origin of the coronavirus without actually accusing China, the Chinese Communist Party launched a trade war that hit Australia extremely hard.
Remember the 14 points that Australia had to do better? Yeah.
Right.
And then they call them the white trash of Pacific.
Among other things. So Crybaby Nation, chewing gum on the shoe.
Yeah.
Our rhetoric is the problem.
Yeah.
But I don't understand this. So it's okay, for 2 years, the Chinese Communist Party has had this trade war that they launched against Australia. Are what we seeing this reset? Is this amnesia? Or is this
yeah, what is going on? What worldview is this?
Yeah.
What's happening?
Exactly. Well, things started to go south when Malcolm Turnbull was prime minister, because he made the decision to bar, and he was pretty tech savvy for a prime minister. He was an early investor in an internet company. He did very well out of that. And, after studying this, they decided to ban Huawei from Australia's 5G network. And of course, Australia was the first country to do that, set the precedent, kind of showed the way. And since then, the US has barred Huawei, then the UK, who was already quite advanced in their discussions with Huawei, and then finally, a couple of weeks ago, Canada. So Australia's done incredibly well out of China's rise. They've had a huge appetite for our commodities, and they've kind of unwritten our wealth for the last couple of decades. And I think certainly Xi Jinping would have been thinking, you've done really well out of us. You're one of the few countries that has a trade surplus with us. You kind of owe us one, and you should fall into line a little bit because, the relationship economically has been so good for you, but we're a treaty ally with the US. And I think, as Mearsheimer might say, you choose your security over your prosperity every time. And so I think the banning of Huawei was a huge, decision in terms of the impact it had on the relationship. And why is that? Because I think Huawei, and I had friends that worked in one of my mates, one of my American friends worked for Cisco in IP. He used to travel up to China all the time from Singapore. They've been pilfering stuff from Cisco, Motorola, T-Mobile, Nortel, like crazy for a long period of time. But it was access to the 5G network that was the real issue. And when we said no, I think that had a huge impact, because Huawei is essentially what I like to call the digital cornerstone of Belt and Road. It's the eyes and ears in the communication network of Belt and Road. So when Australia said no, I think Xi Jinping was not happy, And I think he's, and since we pushed back and stuck up for our sovereignty, I think he's pretty annoyed.
I mean, you hurt his feelings. He's a sensitive guy. I mean, remember, he gets upset when people compare him to a lovable cartoon character.
Right, absolutely. And then on the pandemic, and the perspective I bring here is, when I was based in Singapore, I spent more than a decade in medical technology, medical devices. I've been in operating rooms all over Asia, including in China. I worked in the infection control space for a while for a Swedish company. And during that time, we just come out of SARS and MERS. I was speaking to a lot of hospital infection control specialists, WHO people in Hong Kong and so forth. And they're, world-class people. And so it's been particularly interesting for me watching how the pandemic started unfolding right from the get-go because of that experience. And, what the Prime Minister did was to say, wouldn't it be great to get to the bottom of this and so it doesn't happen again? And if you compare the way that China responded to SARS versus COVID, it was actually more transparent, during SARS. There was a period of time where there was more media freedom and more scrutiny was allowed than under the Xi leadership.
Well, the WHO was not in China's pocket at the time.
Yeah, I mean,
really
actually, the
hard.
WHO kind of forced them to open up a hospital in Beijing where they had been hiding some SARS patients. Like they were trying to pretend there was no outbreak in Beijing, and then the WHO demanded to inspect this hospital. And so, there were at the time there were a lot of media reports, like in the Wall Street Journal, about how the WHO's actions really probably saved a lot of lives by arresting the pandemic much sooner. And now, totally,
Oopsie.
Whoops.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's not an oopsie. It's the CCP then spent, the next decade trying to take over the WHO.
Yeah, right. They actually lobbied hard for Tedros's predecessor, Margaret Chan. She spoke at a Gates Foundation meeting I was at in Jakarta. But then they really went out on a limb with Tedros. It's the art of buying off the corner office. You don't need the whole organization. You just need the corner office, which you can get at a discount. And then you let the Americans pay the big chunk of change for the WHO. The guy calling the shots is, doing your bidding for you. It's brilliant. They're really good at it.
Well, so this kind of goes back to what we were asking earlier, like how, clearly the authoritarian regime is the bad guys. Why are there Australians who think Australia is the bad guy?
That's a great question. One of my favorite kind of China experts in over here is John Lee. And he was born in Malaysia, Malaysian Chinese, and he was Julie Bishop a couple of foreign ministers ago. He was her personal China advisor. And he gets super frustrated by the constant criticism of our own country. And he wasn't even born here. He's more patriotic than most of these people. I think there's some connection between those that have leftish views and giving China a free pass for some reason. And I can't quite fathom what it is. But I guess some of the other things at play here are the mainstream media is not terribly well equipped to cover China. That's one factor. It's now very hard to get people into China, of course, correspondents to get their visas approved. And so there's a lot of folks that don't necessarily have China experience that are commentating on China. And I think one of the other factors is what I like to call elder statesman syndrome, which is, it's a big meaty world issue, right? And if you're a, significant person, you're going to weigh in and have an opinion on it, even though you might not have any China experience, or you might have been there once or twice and stayed in a 5-star hotel in Beijing, Shanghai, or Guangzhou, which is a bit like going on a first date, as opposed to getting married.
Yeah, I mean, first dates aren't really a good barometer, like as Johnny Depp figured out with Amber Heard.
I knew you were going to go there, Chris.
Well,
I feared you were going to go there, Chris.
Yeah, it's what the people want, apparently.
Yeah, we should just call this podcast that and see if we can
podcast.
Boost the views a little. Yeah,
that's a good idea. Yeah, thumbnail.
Our listeners will not feel tricked at all.
No, yeah, they won't be angry.
Well, just on that point, Chris, I love the way you've called China Uncensored edutainment, because talking about China, particularly, I think it's one of the issues from a academic point of view. It can be pretty dry and boring a lot of the time. One of the reasons I've got involved in, and I had never had any ambition whatsoever or interest to become a journalist or a media person But, I felt kind of compelled since I came back to Australia, and my graduate studies and scholarship were paid for by the taxpayer, right? I felt compelled to kind of share my experience and what I knew and kind of give back as well,
Yeah, I mean, that's great. Like, to me, I never understood why people would think China news is like dry. Like, it's always been so insane to me.
Right.
The scripts write themselves most of the time, I think.
did start China Uncensored during like this huge power struggle within the Chinese Communist Party.
Yeah, there's massive power struggles. They were building artificial islands. It's
it's all crazy.
It's all crazy.
Yeah. I love it too. It's it's a passion, and I've been following general hostility with great interest for many years.
Yeah, I would say it is more juicy than anything with Amber Heard and Johnny Depp.
Right. Well, I used to live walking distance from the big red walls of Zhongnanhai,
Oh, yeah.
And wouldn't you love to be a fly on the wall in there sometimes? The palace intrigue must be pretty saucy, to say the least.
Yeah. I mean, the best thing we did was start to compare it to soap operas.
That was fun.
Yeah. That was definitely good.
I mean, I like all the praise for our show, Andrew. So, I mean, if you have more things you want to say that are nice, like
the suggestion box, I'd like to see Matt Gesnider do a few more impersonations. I love the Trump one. Don't do the Australian accent.
Well, I think we've already.
It's pretty bad. Yeah, no,
okay, so
I accept that.
I feel like Matt has 3 impersonations, and we've just ruled out one of them.
Wait, I have Trump. I have Australian, which is next. What's the other one?
You've done Russian a few times.
I have done Russian.
You dubbed Putin a few times.
Yeah, well, I do have some Russian heritage.
Yeah, but that doesn't help your accent.
No, it really doesn't. That was many generations ago.